Penelope took a deep breath and deliberated. She shook her head after a long period of thought. Not yet. Since Trevor didn't call the police, he must have had a plan. If we call the police now and alert them, wouldn't it be more dangerous for Trevor? I must choose to believe in Trevor. I support Penelope's decision, Zach said. Trevor has never fought a battle he couldn't win. I think he must have his own plans. Penelope and Zach were the closest to Trevor. They were sure that he was dealing with all of this in his own way. He was a persistent and powerful man. Selma lost her temper. Penelope said to Zach, "Call the driver. Aren't there 2 drivers in the car? It can't be that everyone's phones are off, right?" Zach knocked himself on the head. "Yes, of course. I was so preoccupied with Lucas that I completely forgot." He turned around and made a phone call. After a while, he walked back with a pale face. "Is no one picking up?" Penelope asked. "No, someone picked up," Zach said with a shaky voice. "Ethan led Trevor to an abandoned factory, but just now." "What's wrong?" Penelope pleaded. She could feel her heart beating out of her chest. "The factory exploded," Zach stated. Penelope's face fell when she heard the word explosion. Her legs went soft and she fell to the ground. Her voice was somewhat uneasy as she shouted, "Where is he? Did he get out?" Zach clenched his fist, looked down, and shook his head. "No." Selma supported Penelope, who had fallen backward. "Penelope, pull yourself together." "Zach, did the driver call the fire department?" Penelope asked. "Yes, but the location is remote. It will take some time for the fire department to get there," Zach explained. Selma pulled Penelope to the door and called Jeremy as they walked. The 4 of them got into the car and went to the location of the incident. Penelope no longer felt like she was in her body. She'd been dragged by Zach and Jeremy the whole time. After getting into the car, Selma asked Zach to tell her about the situation. Zach endured the sadness and recounted the story while driving. They said that after they received the news that Lucas was safe, Trevor asked them to overtake the car. When the man saw Trevor chasing after them, he sped up. The car chased them and was brought to the abandoned factory. Trevor watched as Ethan ran into the factory. He asked one driver to drive the car back and the other to wait for him in the car. They begged to go in with him, but Trevor wouldn't let him, Zach continued. Both were worried about Trevor's safety, so they didn't leave. But they didn't expect that the factory would explode in less than 15 minutes after both men went in. They didn't see either one of them come out. Penelope covered her ears. "Don't say any more. Don't say any more." Zach looked at Penelope in the rearview mirror. As upset as Zach was, he knew that Trevor's wife would be even more upset. Trevor was everything to her. If anything happened to him, Zach couldn't even finish that thought. When they arrived at the abandoned factory, the fire truck had already arrived. The firefighters were putting out the fire. The fire was massive, and thick black smoke filled the air. Penelope stood outside the raging fire and couldn't even stand. Selma comforted her from the side. However, when she saw the fire, she didn't know how to keep herself in one piece, because she wasn't sure if she would be able to see a healthy Trevor later. Time passed as they stood waiting. Penelope knelt on the ground, almost in despair. She was in a state of hysteria. She couldn't even cry anymore. All the strength in her body seemed to have been sucked away. She thought that if something happened to Trevor, she couldn't live past today. Suddenly, a few firefighters helped a man out from the blazing doorway. They were getting closer and closer. Penelope had sharp eyes and quickly got up. She used all her strength to rush over. It was Trevor. It was really Trevor. Penelope rushed over and hugged Trevor tightly, supported by the firemen. The fireman shouted, "Madam, he is injured. You cannot hug him like this. You need to step back." Penelope quickly released him and followed the fireman into the ambulance. Zach also came along. From the moment she saw Trevor until he entered the hospital, Penelope didn't say a word. She just tightly held Trevor's hand. When they arrived at the hospital and had a checkup, the doctor said the situation was not optimistic. Trevor was in a coma due to a lack of oxygen because he had been in a thick and poisonous smoke for a long time. Penelope thought that at least Trevor was still alive and there was hope for him to live through this. In the afternoon, Selma and Jeremy rushed over. The 2 of them had been waiting at the fire scene until now. Ethan's body was found and it was burnt. According to the firefighters, this factory had a bomb planted in advance. This accident was man-made. The police retrieved the surveillance video from a neighboring building. They witnessed Ethan come here a week ago. After staying inside for an afternoon, he drove away again. Based on the situation at the scene, the police concluded that this bomb was installed by Ethan. Trevor was just a victim. The company held a shareholder meeting on the third day after Trevor was hospitalized. Zach said they couldn't hold them back anymore. Penelope thought that the Baxley family was Trevor's blood and respected him. She couldn't let Trevor wake up and discover that the Baxley family had changed owners. She wanted to protect the Baxley family group. She asked Selma to help her invite the other shareholders, hoping to get help. This was Trevor's matter, and their responsibility was to see it worked out for him. With the help of the others, Penelope successfully became the acting chairman. However, she wasn't sure if she could manage the company. She could only learn from the beginning while Zach assisted her from the side. Trevor never woke up. To others, Trevor was in a vegetative state, but Penelope didn't think so. No matter how busy and tired she was every day, no matter how windy and rainy it was, she had to see Trevor. Sometimes when she felt wronged, she would visit Trevor. Those feelings vanished at once. The current Trevor was her healing medicine. With the help of Zach and Adrian, the company slowly returned to track. Penelope rarely went to the company other than for her daily tasks. She brought Miss Leanne to sit with Trevor in the hospital every day. Zach would bring the documents to the hospital for her to sign. Lucas asked, "Mom, why is Dad so lazy? He hasn't woken up from his sleep yet. He promised me that he would bring me to Disney this fall. It is almost autumn." Penelope smiled and rubbed Lucas's head. "Dad is a man of his word. He will keep his promise. Mom has always trusted Dad. You should trust him too." Penelope reassured her son.
"Of course I trust my dad. My dad and I are the best partners,"
Lucas said proudly. Penelope rubbed his head. "You stay here and guard Dad. I need to use the bathroom."
"Okay,"
Lucas replied. Penelope went into the washroom not long after. She heard Lucas's voice from outside. Penelope thought he was talking to her, so she replied, "Lucas, give me a moment. I can't hear what you're talking about."
"Mommy, I'm not talking to you,"
Lucas replied.
"I'm talking to Daddy. Daddy is looking at me with his eyes open."
In the washroom, Penelope was stunned for a moment. Trevor opened his eyes. Penelope was so excited that she didn't even wash her hands before she ran out. She came to the bedside and looked. She was so excited that she was trembling. She rushed to the bedside and pressed the bell. She was so excited that she started to cry. Trevor, look at me. Do you recognize me?" Trevor forcefully pulled up a smile. When he opened and closed his lips, he was saying to her, "My love, I missed you so much." Penelope bent down and hugged him. Her eyes were filled with tears of happiness. "Trevor, you're back. Do you know how much I missed you? I really missed you." At that moment, Penelope felt that the world was lit up again. She was incomparably grateful for the kindness and love she had been gifted. Trevor's eyes were filled with pain. "I'm sorry I came back late." Penelope hugged him tightly and sobbed. "As long as you come back, all is good. We need to be happy for the rest of our lives. We can't be separated again." "I promised you we will live out our lives until we grow old," Trevor promised. Penelope kissed him on the cheek. Her happiness had come back. Trevor asked in a low voice, "Where is my uncle?" "He died," Penelope said. Trevor closed his eyes. The image of the factory a few months ago appeared in his mind. That day he followed Ethan into the factory and was ambushed. Ethan tied him up and said, "I expected you and your men would do this, so of course I held back. Trevor, I want money. I'll keep you alive if you give it to me." Trevor sneered. "And then what? You'll kidnap Lucas again and ask for more money? Let me tell you, Ethan, you are a bottomless pit." "You mean you would rather die?" Ethan sneered. Trevor chuckled. "My life is not important. What is important is that my lover and my 2 children must live a peaceful life. Ethan, I have a secret buried in my heart for many years. Do you want to hear it?" Ethan looked down at the time. "Speak." "Do you know that you have a son?" Trevor asked. Ethan was stunned for a moment, then he sneered. "What a joke." "You don't believe me?" "Of course I don't believe you. I've only loved one woman in my life. I have never slept with any other woman before." Trevor smiled sarcastically. "What about the woman you've loved?" Ethan's expression froze. Your mother? I'm asking you, have you slept with her before? Trevor asked again. What? You want to hold me accountable for your father? Ethan snorted coldly. I might as well tell you. I've touched your mother, and I even used force. I wanted to break their love, so what if you know? Do you still want to take revenge for your father? Trevor gritted his teeth. Yes, they are all dead, but you are still alive. You killed them. You are the murderer. Do you know why you are still alive? Because of my grandmother's kindness to you. I would have brought you to justice long ago if it weren't for her. Of course, Ethan would not believe it. If your grandmother really wanted to help me, she would have helped me a long time ago. Is that so? I really hope my grandma has never helped you before. That way, I wouldn't be in so much pain. I would have sent you to prison if I didn't know anything. I wouldn't have foolishly betrayed my parents, Trevor yelled out. What do you mean? Ethan asked. You are much worse than my father, Trevor screamed. I just told you that you have a son. You said that you only have one son. What do you mean by what I said? Ethan suddenly froze. What did you say? Trevor coldly stared at him, his eyes full of resentment and meaning. Ethan's voice trembled. You mean you are my son? As he spoke, he suddenly recalled the year he forced his sister-in-law. No, wasn't it exactly the year before you were born? According to the month. Ethan looked at Trevor with a tongue-tied expression. You really are. I will never accept that reality in my heart, Trevor said. You've done so many things that you are responsible for. The reason why I came here today was not to give you the money. I want to sever the blood bond between you from now on and me. You will never appear in front of me again. You are never to harass Penelope and my 2 children. Ethan lowered his head to look at his watch and hurriedly rushed towards Trevor like a madman. His hands were shaking as he untied the rope on Trevor's ankle. Trevor narrowed his eyes. What are you doing? Trevor, don't talk. I installed a bomb here. I need to get you out of here. Trevor roared. You're crazy. Don't talk. I didn't know you were my son. I never thought that she would give birth to my child. I was wrong. 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 He kept repeating himself as he untied Trevor. The rope was untied. Ethan pushed Trevor. Let's go. It's going to explode. Trevor stood up and ran out. He ran a few steps, but found Ethan didn't move. He turned back and shouted, What are you doing? Let's go. I want to take responsibility for my sins. Are you crazy? Trevor grabbed him and ran out. If you want to die, go out and die. Don't drag me down. Ethan was worried that he would drag Trevor down, so he ran out with him. The 2 of them had just arrived at the stairs when Ethan looked down at his watch. It was too late. He raised his hand and pushed Trevor towards the stairs. Behind him, a bomb exploded. Trevor's body was blown a few meters away by the heat wave. He fell into a corner and fell unconscious. When he opened his eyes again, he was already in the hospital. He didn't know that 4 months had passed when he opened his eyes. Ethan was no longer alive. A month later, at the Baxley Corporation CEO office door, the secretaries were busy preparing for the company's half-year celebration. Penelope walked in from outside while making phone calls. She had just received 2 phone calls. They were both good news. She couldn't wait to share it with Trevor. The first was that Selma was pregnant. She'd been pregnant for more than 6 weeks. The second was that Millie finally married the man she loved after many years on the first day of the month. Everything was going in the right direction. Everyone was happy, and Penelope felt very happy too. The next day, in Mountain Cemetery, Trevor held Penelope's hand in one hand, and Penelope pulled her children behind her. After cleaning the graves, Penelope asked Trevor to bring the 2 children to the pathway to wait for her. After Trevor left with the children, Penelope's face revealed a happy smile as she looked at the photos of her mother and sister. You know what? I'm thrilled. I love my husband and my children. You all know what's going on in the spring. You can rest assured now. Trevor stood in the distance and watched Penelope walk towards him. Her body was bathed in sunlight. He suddenly felt that happiness was actually effortless. With the woman he loved and 2 children by his side, it was enough. When you are happy, the world is always gentle. The future can be expected. The rest of his life would be perfect.